Welcome to Vintage SF. I'm Richard Rempel. Today we're going to take a book tour. I've done a book tour before of the illustrated SF Encyclopedia and also of John Clute's The Encyclopedia of Science Fiction. Today we're going to take a look at The Making of Planet of the Apes by J.W. Rinzler. I've got my iPhone set up here and the book on the desk, so let's take a look. First, let's take a look at the dust jacket. The publisher is Harper Design. It's an imprint of Harper Collins Publishers. Let's take off the dust jacket. On the inside front flap, we have a description of the book itself. And on the back flap, we have about the author. Now the cover itself. The Making of Planet of the Apes. And there's the iconic spaceship crash in the water. They're setting it up for a shot. Taking a look at Variety magazine. One of the cages that the humans were stored in. Blueprint for the spaceship, as you saw in the title page. The foreword is by Charlton Heston's son, Fraser C. Heston. Chapter 1, Mystery Planet, looking from 1939 to 1963. This is a picture of Charlton Heston as Macbeth. And we see a young Charlton Heston. And here is the author, Pierre Boulle. His most famous novel, The Bridge Over the River Kwai, arguably his most famous, and then he followed it up with Planet of the Apes. He is a French author, so the original book was in French. It was translated into English, and in Britain, they called it Monkey Planet. In the United States, they called it Planet of the Apes. Eventually, all publishers in English called it Planet of the Apes. Included in the book is a summary of the novel. We will also see summaries of screenplays. Chapter 2, Twilight of the Apes. This is from 1963 to 1964. The novel was published in 1963. This starts to talk about purchasing the film rights to the novel. As you can see, there's a lot of detailed research in this book. For example, here's a picture, the telefax that went to Pierre Boulle's agent, claiming that Blake Edwards was going to direct the film. This film took a long time to get into production. There were many changes in cast and directors. The very first script for Planet of the Apes came from Rod Serling, You may know him from The Twilight Zone or Night Gallery. Some say that Planet of the Apes, in reality, is the first Twilight Zone movie. I found this area of the book fascinating. Here we have Planet of the Apes by Rod Serling, May 25th, 1964, summary of first draft screenplay. Planet of the Apes is a big part of our culture now, and there's been many film adaptations over the years. I would just like to highlight first that the novel, in my opinion, is better than any of those films. It is also framed in a way that none of the films are framed. That said, I do think there are a number of good adaptations, including this 1968 film. But Rod Serling's first draft is certainly not the film that you saw. His first draft followed a little bit more closely the ape planet as depicted in Pierre Boulle's novel. The Death of Humans, 1964 to 1965. Here is a top secret memo. This is one of the first scripts that had the reveal at the end of the movie. A reveal which may be one of the most famous reveals in film history. If you have not seen the film, beware, there will be spoilers as we look through this book. And the back cover of the book, on the dust jacket, was that reveal. And here we have Planet of the Apes by Rod Serling, December 17th, 1964 and January 7th, 1965. Summaries of the second draft and revised second draft. One of the problems that they had in these drafts is that the film depicted a society, the ape society, as a more modern society. They were living in cities with planes and automobiles. For the film, they had to take away some of these items. They would be difficult to do in special effects. We have a more organic set for the apes in Planet of the Apes. So we're now leaving 1965. That's 2 years after the novel was released. And we're still 3 years away from the film premiering. Here you can see some of the visualization of what the Statue of Liberty could look like. Chapter 4, Simian Siren Songs, 1965 to March of 1966. Now the production of the film is starting to move forward, and we're looking at costuming, set designs, as you can tell, the research also takes into account what is going on in the 1960s, especially in the United States. The Vietnam War looms large in the background for this film. Some early cost-effective looks at what the apes could look like. By the way, I keep saying apes, but there's gorillas, orangutans, and chimpanzees. Chapter 5, The Fox and the Monkey, April to December of 1966. Here we can see some early designs for the ape village. One of the screenwriters who came out to the film was Michael Wilson. He'd been blacklisted in the 1950s in the McCarthy era. He wrote for many films after being blacklisted, but just could not be given credit. Now, in the mid-1960s, he was able to use his name again. Here we can see the designs becoming more organic, like those that we see in the film. Chapter 6. Saving Astronaut Thomas. December 1966 to April 1967. The Makeup Men. Here are some photos that are taken from a trip to Utah and Arizona. They were looking for locations for the movie. Just some fantastic artwork here by the art department. Here we see some shots of test wardrobe. I haven't read the whole book, but I have paged through it a number of times. The section I have read is the beginning, regarding Pierre Boulle and Rod Serling. A summary of Michael Wilson's final draft screenplay, April 3rd, 1967. Chapter 7, Anthropod Alchemy, April to May of 1967. Now we're getting close to the makeup and effects that we do see in the film. Here we see the construction of the village. A statue that we see within the village. Here we see a few pictures from the storyboard for the movie. Linda Harrison's costume for this movie harkens back to Raquel Welch's costume for 1 Million Years BC from 1966. Filming The Forbidden Zone, May to June of 1967. So now filming has begun, a year ahead of its release. Of course, for every picture here in the book, there are detailed descriptions. Chapter 9 of Subhuman Bondage, June 1967. If you're not familiar with this story, there really is a reversal between apes and humans. Apes are now civilized, and the humans are now the wild creatures. The crash landing of the spaceship from Earth introduces a human who can talk. This disrupts the scientific community and creates the tension that we feel between the wild humans and the civilized apes. The scenes that you see here on the right page are scenes or dioramas from a museum. This is how the apes depict the humans. Chapter 10, The Hunt. June to July, 1967. A fantastic bridge in this village from the set. And here's a wide shot of the set. Charlton Heston brought his unique cadence in speech and his depiction of action heroes. Doesn't look too comfortable being in that net. Or even in that cage. There are quite a lot of remarkable photos from the production in this book. Chapter 11, Desperate Dreams, July to August of 1967. One of the astronauts who were in hibernation did not make it. Their hibernation chamber failed. Here again we see some of the blueprints for the space capsule. And here we see the set design and construction for the Statue of Liberty. Chapter 12, Post-Evolution, August to December of 1967. We take a look at post-production, at matte paintings, and sound and editing. Chapter 13, Revelation of the Apes, January 1968 to April 1969. Here we can see the score being recorded for Planet of the Apes. Some of the posters promoting Planet of the Apes. Here at the premiere we have Mort Abrahams, Charlton Heston, and Edward G. Robinson. The billboard outside the theater. And in a turnaround here, we have the film coming back to Pierre Boulle's country, to France. Planéte de Singes. Some of the fake newspaper coverage used for promoting the film. Epilogue, Legacy of the Apes. Here we see Arthur Jacobs and Pierre Boulle. It must have been thrilling to see his novel on the screen. And here's that iconic scene from the end of the film. The acting of Charlton Heston is just so spot on. For the appendix, we have the complete cast and crew for the film. Bibliography. Acknowledgements. And an index if you would like to look up something specific. I'm very impressed by the research and care that went into the creating of this book. I definitely recommend it. Until next time, keep reading.